Welcome to Digital Marketing ROI, the podcast that connects marketing to your business's revenue and covers everything you need to know to stay up to date in this crazy digital marketing world.
Welcome to Digital Marketing ROI. I'm your host, Shannon, and I'm joined by my favorite co-host, Krystal. Hi, Krystal. How are you today?
I'm great, Shannon. How are you?
I'm good. We're all surviving our hot weather.
Yeah, July in Indiana is always hot, and that's fine. I actually like it. I don't mind because at least it's better than snow.
It is. And I came home yesterday and my house was 80 degrees.
Oh, no. Yeah.
And I said to my 13-year-old, did you not notice it was hot? And tell me like something's going on. But she was in the basement, which is where her bedroom is. And so it's a little down there.
Yeah.
So she didn't really notice. And so, yeah, now I'm dealing with that. And to all of our listeners that might be HVAC people and fix air conditioners, when I Google air conditioner emergency contact near me, you need to show up, right?
100%.
Or you should be creating some video strategy, which is what we're going to talk about today.
Yes. Yes. And talk specifically about those problems that we're having right now.
Exactly. We're going to talk about what I think is something that's crucial for businesses, creating those video commercials that actually work, right? These are commercials that are running on streaming platforms such as could be Netflix, Hulu, Pluto TV, right? These commercials you cannot skip, but it's a great chance to not only get your message out there about who you are as a brand, but to target the right consumers.
Yes.
So I'm going to really just help our listeners to understand what would make a streaming commercial different from a traditional TV ad, and how can we really craft that message to capture the attention when people are out there binge watching, right? What are you binge watching right now, Krystal? Anything exciting?
My daughter's really into the Trolls movies right now, so that's what I've binge watching, but we are watching them on Peacock. We get like 2 minutes of ads before the beginning of the movie. My daughter is, she's so funny because she's like, Mom, what is this? Because she's not so used to the ads, but because usually we watch on Disney Plus, which we don't have ads on. But since the Trolls are all on Netflix and Peacock, she's like, what are these? These are ads.
These are ads. So, this is what mommy does helps with for a living.
This is how we pay for our house in your school.
Right. So yeah, today's really about what should the message be to get their attention, right?
Yes. Yeah. And so let's start off with the basics. So we know streaming viewership has exploded, and we know that it's very similar to TV in terms of content. It's video content that people are watching, but it's not broadcast, and it is on demand, and it's whatever people want to watch. But in terms of advertising, when we are making commercials for OTT and CTV platforms, how does that differ from a traditional TV commercial?
Well, the first thing that really comes to mind for me is we used to talk about TV channel surfing, right? Maybe some of the younger generation doesn't understand that, but typically a streaming viewer, which is somebody that is choosing what platform they want to stream from, they come in with a different mindset. They're actually engaged, and they also know that they're going to get served commercials because they've chosen something like a platform like Pluto TV or the Hulu package that actually you have to watch the commercials. So they actually are engaged, right? That's first and foremost. Second is, back in the day, I remember I would be flipping mindlessly through channels, right? If you're on cable, you're on DirecTV, or you're on Dish, you're like, what's on tonight? What should I be watching? Where we don't surf the same on streaming, right? We were more intentional, which makes us more engaged, right?
Yes.
So without that remote control changing, your ad is going to be seen, but you really only have a few seconds to prove yourself and get their attention, right? Mm-hmm. And hopefully it's targeted. So talking about like the Trolls movie, you're watching commercials, the smart advertiser or marketing person would be running commercials that are targeting moms that might be watching those type of movies with their children, right?
Yes. Yeah, the ads are definitely for me, not for my daughter. It's targeting our household. And so sometimes the ads are a little bit more geared towards my husband, but it is definitely like, I know that these ads are for us. I've never seen an ad for something where I'm like, why am I being shown this?
That goes back to keeping in mind that audiences are more targeted because we're data driven, knowing who's there and what we're trying to accomplish. So you can reach those specific demographics or interests and viewing behaviors based on where you place your ad, where the old traditional TV might be more really upper funnel, broad awareness, right? So it's more targeted. And then something else to think about is devices you're on, right? Viewing environment. So people are watching on small devices on their phone, they're watching on laptops, they're watching on tablets, right? So the smaller groups are alone, you're really more one-on-one marketing because it's not just sitting in front of your living room, right? That's one way. And then really just things to think about are also these higher engagement expectations. So a streaming audience expect quality content, right? Which includes the ads. I say to clients all the time, you're going to get served ads. Wouldn't you rather have an ad that is targeted to you? So really, when you're thinking about the message in your commercial, think outside the box and try to do a very quality commercial that is going to grab their attention in those first couple of seconds.
Yes. Going back to your HVAC example, is your air conditioner going out? Indiana summers are so hot, or Midwestern summers are so hot. And if your air conditioner goes out, we can help you.
Yes. So really the competition for attention is different from traditional TV versus the streaming. You're competing with premium content for those that are specifically deciding what they're watching. So those are there's a lot of lists there of things to keep in mind for listeners, but this is all leading us to better content of the commercial, of the video.
Yeah. Well, you talked about wanting to make sure that even though the viewers are very engaged, you still need to capture their attention.
Yes.
And the best
they're still getting up and walking and getting water during this time or doing other things.
Correct. 100%. So you still have to have that hook at the beginning, like the first 5 to 10 seconds. Yes. What are the key elements that businesses should be including in that hook so that they stop before they go get their water and then come back to watch their show?
I really thought this through and I was like, okay, what grabs my attention? I always like to bring it back to the consumer. Number one, start with a visual or a sound that's immediately recognizable to your target audience. I used to talk about the Menards ad, the banjo playing, like bing, 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 bing.
Yep.
Even though that might be irritating to some people, we heard that and we know right away that that's a Menards ad, right? Yeah. So having that, creating that brand and a consistency in your video messages, whether that is the visual or the sound.
Yes.
Number two, lead with a problem or a pain point your audience faces. So you just mentioned the heat. Boy, that's a problem for me right now. If I saw a visual of somebody that's like dying sitting in front of the fan because their AC is out, that is a visual that connects. So make it instantly relatable, because you have that targeting ability based on what your message is. And then use these pattern interrupts, something unexpected that breaks through the ad mode mindset. Okay. So there's so many really great commercials out there. Like I go back to that you can, just like in content, just like when you're writing for social management, there is video pillars that you can think about. Do you want to make this humorous? We're running a commercial for hospice there. You're going to tug at their heartstrings, right? There's emotional there. So there's all levels that you have to decide what should go into that to catch their attention right away. And the biggest one that I like is show, don't tell, right? Visual storytelling works much better than the talking heads in the opening seconds. Don't just say it, show it.
Let's talk about that because show, don't tell is the foundation of effective storytelling. And OTT advertising really gives you the ability to flesh out that story and to do that storytelling really well. How should businesses approach that storytelling aspect differently than the other video marketing that they're doing?
So think like a mini TV show producer, okay? Like we can be really creative here, but a streaming audience expects very narrative quality, right? So they do expect the story to continue, and that's the best way you're going to grab their attention. So focusing on the emotional connection, like we just talked about. So that's one great way, that connection over your features and your benefits. If it's like the hospice example that I gave, you're going to tug on their heartstrings, right? Another angle that you can go after is really that entertainment mode. I think about one of my favorite Super Bowl commercials was back when Ben and J-Lo were still together and they did the Dunkin' Donuts, like the humor behind that story that like brought us all in. I'm not telling everybody they have the ability to have a budget like that, but there was definitely an entertainment mode there, right?
Well, but let's talk about that because yes, it had Ben and J-Lo in it. And so they're instantly recognizable as celebrities. But what really made that commercial effective is the look that a wife gives her husband and the eye roll.
You can connect with like, what are you doing? And they're in the drive-through window and they're like, what are you doing there?
What do you mean? Why are you working here? And it's funny. It's an awkward situation that is silly. It's very relatable. Like you can do that with everyday people. You don't need Ben Affleck and Jennifer Lopez to tell that story.
Well, And that was one of my points was you want to create characters or scenarios that your target audience sees themselves in, right? They can put themselves in that place. Like you just said, that's the wife looking at their husband like, what are you doing? I'm embarrassed, right?
Yeah.
The documentary style footage can also be very effective, right? Streaming audiences can spot overly produced content as well. So you don't have to overly produce this. And you want to be more authentic and organic. I like the show a day in the life approach. How does your product fit naturally into the consumer's world? Like looking at that. So there's multiple approaches. And when you're creating your storyline and your messages, you really need to know what direction you're going in so that you can figure out where you're going to try to connect with the audience.
I love that. What are the biggest mistakes that you see businesses making, especially when it comes to repurposing their traditional TV ads or let's say their social media videos? Because like a day in the life, that almost seems like an influencer marketing campaign.
Yeah.
Maybe it can be repurposed for a video streaming OTT ad, but what are the biggest mistakes that you see businesses making?
Sometimes I think because we're trying to save on what we're doing, we use the same 30-second TV spot without adapting it for the streaming mindset. In traditional TV, your targeting ability is really based on where your time slot is, right? You're guessing that a consumer's watching the morning news. So the audience isn't very targeted. So you're using a very upper funnel branding and you think that exact same commercial fits into the targeted audience when you really need to have different content for different audiences. So keeping that mindset is probably the biggest mistake I see businesses do. And I get it. It's budget conscious, but sometimes then you have to make the decision. I'm not telling you don't run TV, but if you have a limited budget, you might need to pick, am I going to run traditional TV or am I going to pick streaming that I can target my audience? I would go with the latter because your limited budget, you're going to have one more quality over quantity, and you really know who's watching it. I can tell you statistics streaming that the TV can't show, right? So that's probably the biggest one.
Do you choose the audience or have the audience in mind when you're coming up with the video creative for
Absolutely. Absolutely. The strategy has to first and foremost, what is our goal? What are we trying to accomplish with this? If you're a credit union and we're switching out rotating video, okay, right now might be a great time to do a HELOC commercial about your home equity line of credit versus a first-time home buyer message because based on rates right now. So we really do want to create that based on not only seasonality, but what's going on in the economy, what's going on with your product and their audience. So definitely that should tie in. And that's a mistake that people aren't always paying attention to. Mm-hmm. One thing that drives me crazy is when I see somebody in a commercial that's trying to cram too much information into a commercial, right? It's like when you put way too much information on a display ad or way too much information on a billboard, right? Or the wrong information. Don't try to do too much. Think of the streaming commercial as a way to connect, but just like in a display ad, if you can't connect in the first 3 to 5 seconds with something that's going to engage them, you're not going to keep them enticed anyway. So don't try to cram all your information and tell too many stories in that 30-second spot.
Yeah, it's just information overload and it becomes too much. And that is really disengaging.
Right. 100%. Another one would be not optimizing for different viewing environments, right? Mobile versus TV versus tablet. There are people that come up with different places, like a different commercial. You might want, maybe you can do a 60-second on your large screen device, but maybe have a 30 and a 15 that adjusts better to the different devices. I love it when a client gives me multiple, right? And they'll say, which one works better? We always say 60s aren't very good. There's not as much inventory. It doesn't mean I can't try it out. So having that adaptability and knowing that having more options, maybe a 15 and a 30 is more beneficial when you're producing. It's just as easy for somebody when they're producing a commercial to, if you have a 30, you can also create a 15 out of that. Mm-hmm. And again, this goes along with not testing different versions. Not only should we have a 15 and a 30, but wouldn't it be great to have two totally different, have one that's more emotional connect and one that's more testimonial driven, or, one that's comical and one that is more serious. Like test out which one works out better if you have the budget to do something like that. And then last but not least, you still need a call to action, right? Missing the call to action is really something that I see happen more often than not. Is you still have to, it's still a story, grab their attention, quickly tell a very brief story and end it, tie it all up in a bow on where they can get more information. Leave them wanting more.
Is there a CTA style? I think of like traditional TV ads. They're repeating the phone number 5 times at the end of the commercial.
No.
Things like that. Is there a CTA style that is really effective in an OTT ad?
I'd like to say that I know exactly what that is. And I can't tell you from a statistic what we see works really well. Remember, most of these can be clicked on and go right to the website. That's why I said if you have a different device that you're using on your mobile, that one is click now for more information. But if it's on the large screen, it's really, do you want them to stop in? Do you want to give them a call to action with this lasts through the end of the week and you get a sale item, you get a percentage off. Like Halara right now is running video commercials and all over social. And they have these like tennis dresses that they're selling. And it's literally your 80% sale is ending today. Don't miss out. Well, it's been going on for a week and I was panicking. I thought I was going to miss it.
They do a good job of creating that sense of urgency, even though, and we know that ad campaign is not running for 24 hours.
I can't give you exact all the best ones. What I can tell you, the ones that don't work effectively, are the ones that don't have one.
Yes. 100%.
Unless your message is very top funnel branding, the call to action is harder to connect with. But those are the kind of conversations that you really want to have with your marketing partner to understand what should I be doing. The best thing to do is to ask a few people's opinion of what your storyline is. And when you put together what your video and your copy is, have somebody else look it over. Did I connect with everything? Do I have a great target audience? Do I have a call to action at the end? And can I do all this in 15 seconds?
Yeah. And that's a challenge, but if you work with a quality partner who can help you, they can make that a lot easier on you.
Yes.
So let's bring it back to the topic of our podcast, ROI. How does investing in quality OTT video and trying to do all of those things, testing different messages, testing different links and things like that, how does that translate to better ROI for businesses?
So first and foremost, let's talk about massive reach. Okay. We have finally hit the tipping point where more consumers are streaming on platforms than they're watching linear TV. So we know where the audience is. I still have a few naysayers out there with clients that we work with that are still finding it hard to believe that more consumers stream than they do watch linear TV. But let's think about it. Like if you're running with the local CBS station, there's not to say that there isn't people watching that, but that means they're only choosing to watch CBS. When I have massive reach, 97% of households can be reached via a programmatic OTT or CTV ad. 97%. It keeps growing, right? So that doesn't mean that everybody's there. And I'm not saying that's only 3% missing. That number can be a little bit misleading, but the tipping point happened. It's over 50% of people are completely watching streaming. Most of them are still doing a little bit of hybrid, right? So that's why that 90% is so high. So 40% of video marketers have already reallocated budgets from traditional TV to increase their OTT or CTV spending. That's big. That's really grown. Just completion rates, right? We don't know if you're watching traditional from an ROI perspective. In traditional TV, we don't know if they watched our commercial or not. We don't know if they skipped it, they walked out of the room. I don't know with CTV if they walked out of the room. I can't identify that, but I do know they weren't able to skip it.
Yes. Well, and you also see how many people or how many devices it was delivered to. Whereas with traditional broadcast, it aired here and it's an estimate. They don't know exactly how many people or how many devices or homes that it was delivered to.
And we have more capabilities. So cross-device matching has capabilities to reach the consumer at all stages of the consumer journey when it comes specifically to video. So in video, I can catch them on video pre-roll inventory. I can catch them on small device on your mobile. I can catch them on tablet and I can catch them on large screen. So I have more capabilities to reach an audience, a better audience for that ROI. And last but not least, I have tracking capabilities to know that I served them an ad and they came back to the website within 30 days. And in some cases, I can track that they walked into a physical location.
That's really powerful, being able to connect that directly to an action like that.
Yes, 100%. So yeah, I think that's it. I think we'll continue to talk more about it, but with the creative message, just make sure that you put yourself in your own shoes and say, would this catch my attention? And start looking at commercials that you really do watch and that you're engaging with and try to mimic it. That's the best source of flattery, right? Imitation.
And it works for a reason. Don't do it exactly, but there's a lesson, there's a takeaway there. With these effective ads, there is something there. And how can we recreate it in our own way? How can we make it our own to make it really effective for our target audience?
Yep. I think that's it. I appreciate you today on this hot day that we are recording this podcast. So
yeah, absolutely.
Stay cool. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in today, and join us for our next episode of Digital Marketing ROI.
You've been listening to Digital Marketing ROI from Federated Digital Solutions. Do you have an idea for a future episode or a burning digital marketing question? Text ROI to 45364 to get a link where you can share your idea. Subscribe to get new episodes every other Thursday, plus Tip Tuesday insights every week.
Podcasts by Federated Media.